Widdershins, Part 2 by Stephen Sinclair. You were never far from the open sky within the great citadel's walls. The Corvish, like all birds, disliked being closed in under roofs for very long. Massive and labyrinthine, it was built on a huge, roughly triangular rock and surrounded on three sides by an abyss that fell away sheer for almost a mile at its deepest point. On the landward side, it was guarded by three 50-foot-high curtain walls of granite blocks. Here, in the area towards the tip of the triangle, display and magnificence were the order of things. Here, mighty Clan Black Egg truly displayed its wealth and power. War Captain Lake stood impassively before the huge doors of burnished copper that marked the entrance to the Great Hall. They were beautifully worked with pictorial figures that told the story of the Great Migration, the story of the flock's great escape from Earth to the world. On the surrounding walls were incredibly realistic or beautifully stylized paintings of huge trees, both bare and leaved. Half of the ornately carved and vaulted roof above him was jaggedly, cunningly cut away. It was the deepest part of a cloudless night. Innumerable stars shone coldly down. Where the roof did hide them from the view of those who stood below it, huge numbers of diamonds had been so artfully placed on its surface that they exactly mirrored those stars it hid. Here and there, in shadowed alcoves, braziers burned. Everything seemed to shift and move in the sliding shadows. In accordance with etiquette, Lake was bare-armed, bare-chested. The chainmail coat that usually seemed to be part of him was laid aside on the floor beside him. Likewise, his sword and helmet. The man was heavily scarred and heavily tattooed. The tattoos were all, of course, images of crows and weapons, the blades dripping with blood. Half of Lake's face was covered by the image of a black outspread wing. Although expressionless, the man's face ran freely with sweat, despite the cold. The silence was almost palpable. Lake waited and waited. Then a bell rang, once. A high, eerie single peal. This, he knew, was the great bell, thin wailing, of purest silver housed in the highest tower. He was being summoned. The singer of Clan Black Egg was calling him. In apparent answer to the bell, movement. From the antechamber's most shadowed depths, figures shambled forward. At least 36 naked men and women, slack-jawed, drooling faces of idiocy. They were covered here and there with piercings, gold and silver chains, precious and semi-precious stones. These sparkled prettily, in exactly the way calculated to draw the eyes of certain species of birds. Lake paid them not the slightest attention. The slaves were in what was called fully docked or gentled. The horseshoe-shaped lobotomy scars on the sides of their shaven heads were stark. Their only function was to open and close the great doors. They reached the brazen portals and began to push. The doors yawned open. From within the growing area of darkness, tainted red by more torches and braziers, came a susurration of cawing. The thousands of Corvish gathered within were as incapable of human speech as humans were of theirs, but they talked constantly in their own language. Lake walked forward. As always, the giant scale of the place, even after the huge anteroom, was disconcerting. But he made sure he moved confidently. He knew he would be closely observed, although it would just as strongly appear that he was being pointedly ignored. He paused a few yards within the entrance. Turning to the huge, white image there, he quickly made the necessary ritual gestures, ceremoniously offering up his throat and eyes. He made sure he did not stare directly at it. And then he moved forward again. The hall was vast. Along its huge rectangular length, full-size trees grew in irregular groups along the length of the great walls. Soaring pillars of stone 60 feet high, carved so that they seemed to be covered in ivy, supported a field-wide expanse of vaulted ceiling designed to resemble a canopy of enormous leaves. Captain Lake's heavy military boots made little noise on the beautiful floor of solid malachite slabs. This was mostly covered by drifts of dried, fallen leaves. It was said these, and the entire hall, were changed and cleaned daily. He walked quickly but carefully. Sometimes entire branches were thrown in with the leaves for aesthetic effect. All around him, figures moved in the same direction towards the hall's far end. There, with open, star-filled sky above and behind them, on the very brink of the dizzying edge of the cliff, two bare-branched trees 50 feet high clawed starkly at the night sky. Carved from a twin pair of titanic black onyx blocks, the Great Roost was more than the tribe's place of assembly, more even than a display of wealth and power. It was a gauntlet thrown down in defiance into the face of the serpent of reality. The power of the magic that had obviously been used to help its construction flowed from it in undeniable waves. Here and there, the branches were decorated with creepers of gold and silver, so that a Corvish could have them beneath their clawed feet. At the foot of the tree, and a little before them, stood a gold throne. It was empty. Lake would, of course, have to wait once again for the singer to deign to appear. Captain Lake sank to his knees. As he did so, he noted with a kind of amusement that the leaves had been swept away from the cold, hard stone, so as not to cushion his unworthy para-knees. He looked up. Above him, on both the tree's branches, thousands of them already stood. They stared down at him with their unblinking black birds' eyes. The children of the carrion storm. The Corvish.